When last we left our next guest, David Stokes, Show Me Institute Development Director, you were telling us an interesting story about how the city council, the county council, I should say, in St. Louis County, in unincorporated St. Louis County, which is a large section of St. Louis County, failed to pass a landlord bill which would have forced landlords to throw out tenants who had broken the law. And it was rejected in a 5-4 vote, and we all sort of laughed it and said, boy, that was a terrible law. Thank goodness that didn't pass. Now what happened, David Stokes?
Well, it looks like it's going to pass,
what
unfortunately.
Happened?
Well, if you recall last week, at the very end, the very, very end of the talk, I said, but unlike the state legislature or the U.S. Congress, when things fail, then they go out of session and it's hard. You have to start over. At the local level, you can just change something slightly and reintroduce it, which is exactly what happened the day after we spoke last week. So they're moving forward still with landlord licensing in the unincorporated area of the county, which is a totally unnecessary act that's not going to accomplish anything.
How did they change the bill?
Yeah.
They made some very slight changes to it. It's so slight you probably need to just go to the St. Louis County Council website and review it yourselves. I would say they took out a few instances where you'd be required to evict people. That's my understanding. Mm-hmm. So they made it, like the first change they made 2 weeks ago was to clarify that if you simply called 911 because you were the victim of domestic violence, that would not count towards your number of 911 calls allowed before you had to be evicted. So yeah, I mean, we laugh, but that's how bad the bill is. They had to make changes like that.
What about did they say that the landlords are now to throw out the one person?
Well, that's what landlords are saying now, is that the law has changed, and I've never been a landlord, but I have served a lot of papers, which I'll get to in a moment.
Yes.
They're now saying, you're now requiring me, okay, you've clarified that I can't throw out I'm not supposed to throw out the whole family, and I'm only supposed to kick out one person. Unfortunately, there's no law that enables that requirement. That's not how landlords work. You don't just go in and say, well, there's 4 people living here, you, person number 3, you've got to leave. The rest of you can stay.
Right.
There's no law. There's no law enabling that. And as somebody who served, I used to be a deputy sheriff in St. Louis County for a bit, and before that, private process service.
AKA Barney Fife.
AKA Barney Fife. Back in the 90s. Like, I've served plenty of eviction notices.
It's a good thing you changed careers, because you wouldn't instill fear in just about anybody.
Right. My bouncing days at Mississippi Nights were mostly about serving water to the underage kids there. But it never served a paper that's like, 3 people can stay, 2 got to go. I mean, you kick out the whole, everybody who's there gets kicked out. That's how evictions go. So landlords are complaining that the new bill, slightly better as it may be, is still requiring them to do something that's not legal. So the fact that the county counselor's office in St. Louis County would allow this to go forward is amazing. And the fact that this, like so many other things, very frustratingly, will then be decided in courts, but some landlords are going to have to sue and spend money, and they'll probably win, and I hope they do.
Here's what I don't understand about the whole thing. The stated goal of the sponsor of this bill,
Councilman O'Mara,
says he wants to get rid of bad landlords. Now, how does throwing out people get better landlords? And why would landlords take care of places better by throwing 1, 2, or a whole family out of an apartment for something one of them did?
Exactly. I think supporters of the bill would say that the threat of losing your license, doing air quotes there, I shouldn't do air quotes, it's a real thing almost.
Right.
It's the threat of losing your license to own and rent out property in St. Louis County will compel you to be a better landlord. That's what supporters of it
All it means is you're going to be much easier to reject people or discriminate against people, because they look like they might break the law. I don't want to have to try and evict them 3 months later. I'll just try and rent to somebody who I think is a better chance of not breaking the law. So there's all sorts of discrimination forces here.
Absolutely. You're putting landlords in a terrible position to almost, are they going to be forced to subtly discriminate?
Right.
Are they going to break the law after the fact when you can't evict a whole family because one kid got caught underage drinking or selling marijuana?
Right.
I mean, you're putting them, the landlords don't need to be police officers. You're forcing them to be. You're also forcing them to be even more selective about who they rent to in the first place, which is going to punish and hurt punish isn't the right word, hurts the right word.
Right.
The very people who need low affordable housing the most. And some of them are just going to probably throw their arms and say, all right, I won't rent property in unincorporated St. Louis County. So now you're shrinking the housing base for people who need affordable housing the most, which is why groups representing the poor are so opposed to this. This is a terrible proposal.
And so Kelly Jackson throws out a family because they were caught doing something terrible. Drinking. One of them was caught drinking, driving, stealing, robbing, whatever else. Then they have to go somewhere else. So then I have to rent to them? So, right? So Kelly Jackson throws them out. McGraw-Millhaven has to rent to these people?
Well,
it seems like it doesn't solve the problem.
It doesn't solve the problem at all. It will move the problem a little bit to the cities, to the 90 municipalities of St. Louis County, which won't be covered by this law. But it's not like the 90 cities of St. Louis County most of them aren't exactly doing great shakes here. You're simply moving the problem around. And again, like the minimum wage increase, hurting the people you're trying to help if you give the supporters of it the benefit of the doubt.
This bill failed 5-4.
4-3.
I'm sorry, 4-3. Now you're saying that swing vote has changed his mind?
Apparently. They made these subtle, small changes to it, which, to be fair, made a bad bill very, very, very slightly less bad.
Right.
Still bad. So the one person who voted against it, the new county councilman from South County, changed his vote on the perfection vote last Tuesday, and it's up for, I understand, final passage tonight.
And
not tonight, tomorrow night.
And then Steve Stenger has to then sign this into law, if you will.
Correct, he would.
Has he signaled one way or the other how he's leaning?
I believe he's supportive of the bill.
Really?
I believe so. Somebody from his office. I would love to stand corrected and be proven wrong.
Let me ask you this question, David Stokes, and you understand I have to ask the other side of the question, and let me ask this question, and you can answer it any way you want. Is there any possibility that you're so wrong on this, and you have spun this in such a way that you're giving us the complete snow job on what this bill actually does?
No. This bill establishes licensing and requires evictions for minor crimes, and both of those things are completely unnecessary. The idea that the penalty for misdemeanors, minor felonies, drug dealing, whatever,
right.
DWIs, the penalty for that is not homelessness. I mean, there are criminal charges and the like that you have to be convicted of and go through a process. You don't just get to require that an entire family or even just one member before you've been convicted gets evicted to then force you to put the problem on other people. Now homeless shelters are going to have to deal with this. Now the cities of municipalities those people will live there. There's no reason that unincorporated St. Louis County has some right to tell landlords what they have to do here. They have a property maintenance code. Landlords are already living up to that in parts of unincorporated county.
I still don't understand how this somehow gets rid of bad landlords. It doesn't seem like this is the right solution for a bad landlord. How does a bad landlord is still a bad landlord, even though he's kicking people out or not kicking them out?
May make them a worse landlord by not allowing.
Right.
They refuse to rent to people who need a place to stay in the first place.
Yeah, this is.
I would encourage you to have the supporters of it on.
We're going to have the supporters on. We're going to have there's at least 4 of them, I guess, right?
Please have them on. I'd love to hear how opponents of it are wrong.
David Stokes, when can we read you? When can we see you?
We got a lot up on this bill at showmeinstitute.org, and we've got a lot of other stuff has happened lately, such as the Charlotte Police Department disbanding, the minimum wage being overturned, thankfully, by a judge in St. Louis City, and your listeners can read all about it at showmeinstitute.org.
David Stokes, have a good week.
Thanks, McGraw. Thanks, Kelly.
R&R Sanitation Porta Potties.